If the Indiana Hoosiers decide to move on from head coach Mike Woodson, I have some names that you should keep in mind that could replace him in Bloomington.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers. And for those of you who maybe are here for the very first time, I appreciate you and your support of this podcast. We are free and available to you however you get your podcast, audio platforms, YouTube, you name it, we are there. And my goodness, do we have a lot of things to talk about today. When we get through the meat of the show, we do have a basketball game to talk about. Believe it or not, it seems to be the secondary conversation around Indiana basketball right now. The Hoosiers are in Columbus taking on the Buckeyes of Ohio State. We'll talk about a confidence level in that game coming up in just a little bit. If the Indiana Hoosiers decide to move on from Mike Woodson, A, would it work? B, is it a good idea? But if you do that, if you do decide to move on from your head coach, and I'm not talking Indiana in particular, I'm talking in any situation, you need to have a replacement in mind. You need to have several replacements in mind. And if anybody inside the Indiana athletic department happens to be watching this, don't worry, I've done your homework for you. I have several names that you need to keep an eye on and really should be throwing out there if Indiana ultimately does move on from the horrific Mike Woodson era that we're currently living in, on names that just make sense for Indiana basketball to go after as their next head basketball coach. There are several names here from different walks of life, different resumes, but all that I think would make total sense. Some of these are ones that I have been thinking about. Others have been some popular names that I've seen floating around on the internet. And you have to start asking yourself, okay, what type of coach do we want? What type of guy do we want? Do you want to go to a former NBA coach? Do you want to go the player route, former player route? Do you want to go an assistant coach and promote from within? I think any of those options are okay, but I think Indiana needs a proven guy. I think we need to go find somebody who's done it before and can do it again. Somebody that has won at the highest level, at the biggest programs, on the biggest stages. Guys that make sense for Indiana basketball. Ones who understand what it takes to win here. And not just because you played here, right? You took a gamble on Mike Woodson, and it didn't work out. I said that on yesterday's show, where you went and hired the former player. You went and hired the NBA coach. You went and got your guy. And it just hasn't worked out that way. And so rather than going and getting a failed NBA coach and somebody who is stuck in the 80s and 90s way of basketball, why don't you go get somebody that's successful right now in our generation in the last, 5-10 years of college basketball? Notice how I said college basketball? I have several names that I think you should keep an eye on. And the first one is a guy that's currently coaching as when this comes out, as the number one ranked team in college basketball. A guy that has expressed in the past he would love to come and coach at Indiana. He got his start in this very state. He wears the orange and blue, and he is the head coach down at Auburn. He is Bruce Pearl, a guy that I have seen so many Indiana fans bring up and mention years ago. When Indiana was looking for their head coach, they said, go get Bruce Pearl. And I think it was really tough for Indiana to make that move. I think it was tough for them to try and pull him away from what he was building down there. And look at what he's built. Man, he took a program that nobody cared about. Nobody knew anything about Auburn basketball on the college circuit. And now they're the number one team in the nation. They have probably the best player in college basketball in Janai Broome. And they're destined to make another run in the NCAA tournament. He took them to their very first Final Four. And listen to this. I've got everybody on my list today and all their records pulled up here. In college, his career record of 21 years now in coaching college basketball, 461 wins, 219 losses. That's good for almost 68%. He's made the NCAA tournament several times. He's won 5 different conference championships and does have a Final Four appearance with Auburn back in 2019. He loves Indiana. He would be honored to take this type of a job. The question with Bruce Pearl is, would he leave his current situation? It would be really hard to pull him from that because guess what? Indiana would need rebuilt. Indiana would need some polishing. They'd need some shine. We need help here. You're not stepping into a good situation and continuing from a retired Hall of Famer, almost like a John Shire at Duke, right? That's not this. This is, you got to come in and put in the work to get Indiana back to where it needs to be. And I think Bruce Pearl would be willing to do that depending on kind of what his health status is and his age. He's getting older and things like that. It just depends. Does he want to leave the area he's in? Does he want to restart and try to rebuild another program, one that is historically great? Auburn wasn't historically great, but he's making them great right now. He could come in and do everything he's done there better here. A place that's built for basketball, a place that is has a love for basketball, that has the money for basketball. And that's why it would make sense for him to leave the SEC and come home and be the head coach at Indiana. Another name I think you should keep an eye on, as we have 4, actually 5 for you today. Another one that I think would make sense, and we're going to stay from down in the SEC. I've got big names coming up, so don't you go anywhere. How about Chris Beard? How about Chris Beard, the current coach, yes, down in the SEC at Ole Miss. A guy who has been all over the place. Little Rock, Texas Tech. Then he left for Texas. Huge move there. And then the off-court stuff started happening and started coming up, and Texas dumped him faster than an 8th grade girlfriend. Just left him to die outside in the cold. Ole Miss said, we'll take you in. We got you. Our basketball team's terrible. We need somebody like you. And then nothing came of it, and now he's got them as a top 25 team when this episode comes out. I think Chris Beard would be awesome. I think he would be fantastic. He has a 70% winning percentage, 206 wins, 87 losses. He's been to the Final Four. This guy's been to the Final Four, the NCAA tournament 6 times, and has made the deepest run in March. Bruce Pearl's a Final Four coach. Chris Beard is a Final Four coach. And I think Chris Beard is awesome. He's also younger than Bruce Pearl. He's had proven success at more bigger places than Bruce Pearl. Like, yes, BP had Tennessee, and now he's got Auburn. Chris Beard had Texas Tech, then Texas. Now he's doing things at Ole Miss. I think Chris Beard would be a fantastic hire for Indiana. Are his ties here? Not necessarily, but he could be a great coach here for several years to come. So keep your eye out on 2 SEC current head coaches, Bruce Pearl at Auburn and Chris Beard at Ole Miss. How about a retired Hall of Famer? How about a guy that's currently an NBA executive and one that's a current national champion? Have that for you coming up next right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by PrizePicks. This message is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players. And if your pick hits, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes, especially in NFL postseason where defenses get a little tighter, the nerves get a little higher, and it's just so much fun to watch. And look, I think I think Patrick Mahomes is going to make another run. I think the Chiefs are going to make another run at a Super Bowl. His passing yards, take more. I'm just telling you, take more on PrizePicks on Patrick Mahomes. He is going to light it up this weekend in the NFL playoffs, and you can do that with me with PrizePicks. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, just $50 just for playing. All you got to do is go to PrizePicks, get the app, and type in Locked On College. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on all things Indiana Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here. Reminder, we're free to you every single day, Monday through Friday, and we post bonus episodes and have extra content on all of our platforms. So be sure that you are following us on there, subscribing if you can, especially those of you on the YouTube side of things, and liking and commenting and interacting. I want this to be as big of a community as possible here, Locked On Hoosiers, and you can help us by doing that. So thank you so much for all of your support and everything you do to make this show so successful. We're talking coaching names that you should keep an eye on in case Indiana moves on from Mike Woodson, whether that be tomorrow, whether that be after we, lose 7 or 8 games in a row in the Big Ten, or whether they let him finish out the entire season and then they say, probably time to go. I said Bruce Pearl at Auburn is a good idea. I think Chris Beard at Ole Miss is a good idea. How about a couple of other names to run by you here very, very quickly? How about Jay Wright? How about Jay Wright, a guy that is retired, a guy that is a champion twice, by the way, a 2-time champion is Jay Wright, has 4 Final Fours, 2 national championships. In his coaching career, he almost had a 70% winning percentage. He coached for 28 years. Did you know that? I didn't know it was that long. He also was a great player back in the day. I wasn't around for it, but he was. He's a 10-time conference champion in the regular season and a 7-time conference tournament champion. This dude is a legend. He's a Hall of Famer at Villanova. And there have been some rumors flying around that he's interested in getting back into coaching. Indiana ties in particular? No, not necessarily. But this is not the first time that his name has come up. I know I'm bringing it up, but I bring it up for those reasons because I've heard the interest would be there if a big program came calling. He does a great job in his analyst role, right, with his various outlets that Jay Wright's a part of, CBS being the main one. But could you imagine? Could you imagine Indiana, us, the Hoosiers, hiring a 2-time national champion to step on campus and fix every problem that we have? The donors would be behind it. The fans would be behind it. And the players would absolutely flood to Bloomington to be a part of what he's done. Look at all the guys he's put in the NBA, man. This dude is a legend in the game of college basketball. Would he come out of retirement officially? I don't know. I'm not in the Jay Wright camp. I don't really know. But I think it's a name you should keep an eye on. Another guy that's like that, who's not retired, he's just not in the college game right now, but somebody that would just make perfect sense. Oh, it would be a chef's kiss, if you would, for a guy who could legitimately come home to the Hoosier State, a guy who is such a good basketball mind. His IQ is unbelievably big in terms of basketball operations, in terms of basketball game planning, coaching, teaching, execution, right? This guy is currently in the NBA, but not as a head coach. Not anymore. He's an NBA exec. He's high up in the Boston Celtics organization. You know who I'm talking about. Brad Stevens. That's right. The longtime Butler head coach. Back in the day now. We're starting to talk back in the day. I remember growing up as a kid and watching Brad Stevens as the head coach at Butler. His time there in 6 years, 166-49. That's good for 77%. He was a 4-time regular season conference champion, a 3-time tournament champion. And in those 6 years, he made the tournament 5 times and made 2 runs to the Final Four. Those Butler teams were magical. They were magical back in the day. And he's right here in Indiana. He's an Indiana native. He was born in our state. Tell me this doesn't make sense. If he's looking to get out of the NBA product, which is terrible, if he's looking to get back to the college game, get back to his home state and help a school that you would think he would want to help out, right? I think it would make total sense. Now, his NBA coaching record, ups and downs, had some solid years. Remember, he was the head coach at Boston for the Celtics before they then moved him into that higher administration role, and he's been doing that for quite some time as an exec. And he's a genius. Absolutely. It was a great move for the Boston Celtics to do that. I just think Indiana could really make some hay if they gave him a call and said, hey, we need your help. One of the most historic programs in all of college basketball needs your help. Man, when he arrived at Butler, they needed him desperately. And he got there and turned them around like that. You're telling me that with the resources Indiana has, with the fan base that Indiana has, and the player options that Indiana has in this state now, a place that he obviously knows very well, you're telling me he couldn't be successful here? He made Butler good. He sent them to 2 Final Fours and a banked-in shot away from having a chance at a championship. Like, he would make total sense here. Brad Stevens is awesome. And of the guys I've mentioned so far, and I've got one more in just a second, he may be at the top of my list. He may be at the top of my list. And there's a reason I've named all these guys so far, because I think they would work. They all, I mentioned this at the front. They all come from different areas. They all have different skill sets. They all have different winning percentages and different tournament resumes. But they all would make sense to me. And I'm curious on how you feel about this. But Brad Stevens may be at the top of that list for me. And the last one that I want to run by you very, very quickly is a guy who is still actively coaching. And I can't believe he has been coaching this long. I will admit, I didn't know it's been this long. I couldn't believe it when I started doing some research on him and found out he's been a college basketball coach since 2002. He's been at this current program since 2003. I know he's been there a long time, and I knew that going into it. I wouldn't have guessed 2003. I would have said 2010, maybe 08, maybe. I wasn't going to go back this far. A guy that has coached college basketball for 23 years. He has a 65% winning percentage for 23 years. That's pretty good. He coached at Valparaiso for 1 year back in 02-03, where he went 20-11 his first year. He did so good and got a regular season championship ring, championship trophy, that a team from the Big 12 came calling. They said, hey, we need help. Hey, we need help, my man. And we believe in you. We believe in you, a guy that played at Butler, a guy that has now been coaching and in his 23rd, 24th season. How about Scott Drew, the head coach of the Baylor Bears? A national champion, by the way. Another national champion. He's been to 1 Final Four, and he won the championship the year he did it. In his 23 years of coaching, he's been to the tournament 12 times at a place in Baylor that I feel like during his time, they're either really, really good or just really not that relevant. But heck, we'll take anything in Bloomington. We're not picky. Well, let me rephrase. We're not picky right now. Right now, we're not picky. We will be once we get our guy and he gets his guys in there and we get the program turned around and going in the right direction. But for right now, we'll take anything. But I want you to think about this. I just talked about Jay Wright and Scott Drew, our 2 national champions. I included Bruce Pearl and Brad Stevens, who both have Final Fours. Oh, that's right. Chris Beard has a Final Four as well. You know what they all have in common? They have success, proven success at the college level. Sure, some of it was in 2008, 2010, but some of it's right now. And some of it's in between 2016, 2019 or 20 or whenever it was that Auburn was in that Final Four. Like, they all have had proven success. They've had great teams. They've had bad teams, but they have made, and when they were there at the time, made their programs relevant again and made their programs scary again, made their programs respectful again. And that's what Indiana needs. That's what this logo needs. That's what our colors need. That's what our campus needs. That's what our state needs. Indiana needs somebody like these guys. So whether it be Bruce Pearl, Brad Stevens, Jay Wright, Chris Beard, right, or Scott Drew, and maybe somebody else that you can drop in the YouTube comments below, somebody like this is what it will take to get Indiana out of the depths of hell that we're in. You can't keep doing what you're doing, Indiana. You can't stick with your guy right now. It's not going to work. And these are just some possible names that you need to keep an eye on if, and hopefully when, Indiana makes a move on Mike Woodson. All right, coming up here in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we do have a game to talk about. Hoosiers are in action tonight. Can we go 3 straight of losing 25 points or more? No, I'm kidding. Hopefully we do get it turned around, and we're on the road against an Ohio State team that I feel like their record doesn't tell the whole story. We'll have that for you on our final segment right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings and wondering if they're ever going to come. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or you're just looking to add some extra excitement, if you're like me and your favorite team's not in the postseason anymore, you can hop on FanDuel because they have you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. And I've said it several times, but if you're looking for something else to watch, looking for something else to listen to, maybe 30 minutes for you just isn't enough. Maybe you need more. Maybe you have a longer drive to work, or you have to take a longer shower, or you're cooking dinner, whatever you may be doing. We have so many shows for you on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On College Basketball, a daily show on everything college basketball. Locked On College Football, a daily show on everything college football. Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman, IU grad, by the way. He talks everything around the Big Ten Conference. So those 3 shows combined with us, there's 2 hours of your day, 2 of your 8 hours at work. Not too bad. So be sure you check those shows out on the network and tell them that Jacob Goins from Locked On Hoosiers sent you. All right, enough coaching talk for now because Indiana does still have a current head coach, and it is Mike Woodson. And he's taking his team on the road to Ohio State, to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes, who right now are 10-7 overall on the season and 2-4 in Big Ten play. They started the year right with that win over number 19 Texas, who I believe just got their first win in the SEC this week. So maybe that's not as good as we thought it was. They lost to Texas A&M. They lost to Pitt. They lost to Bruce Pearl's Auburn team. They did, however, beat the 4th-ranked team at the time, the Kentucky Wildcats. I think that's a great win. That's a great win for Ohio State. They lost to Michigan State. Oh, apologies. Rewind here. Lost to Maryland in their Big Ten opener, which at the time seemed not great. Right at the time was like, ooh, right? What happened? But I think now that's starting to look a little bit better with how Maryland is performing. They beat Rutgers 80-66. And then in the Big Ten restart, they lost to Michigan State 69-62. That was at home in Columbus. They beat Minnesota 89-88. That's a bad Minnesota team. Then they played Oregon and they hung in there 73-71. Really good Oregon team. And then Wisconsin was able to grab them 70-68. And so very up and down, right? Very inconsistent. You have a team that I told you coming into the preseason, or I guess in the preseason coming into the season, I liked this Ohio State team. I think they're very talented. I think their transfer portal class was really good. I think their head coach is really good. And I think they're a program that is looking to get back into relevancy. Them and Michigan, I put them in the same category. Looks like Michigan's going to be much better than they are. That's the other team I told you about. But don't be fooled by the record of this Ohio State team. They can get up and get anybody when they want to. They have right now 4 guys that average double digits, including Bruce Thornton, the guard, who drops 17 points a game. Question is, who's going to guard him? Who gets the fun task of guarding Bruce Thornton, who stands at 6'2", 215 pounds, who can pretty much do it all? I believe he shoots at let's see. I was just looking at it. Where'd it go? There it is. He's shooting 43% from behind the arc this year. Oh boy, a team that can shoot. Great. Nothing can go wrong for Indiana, right? We're on the road. We're taking on a good, talented team. They can shoot the three. Indiana's got pretty much negative momentum right now. Back-to-back 25-point losses. What could go wrong against Ohio State on Friday night? Just about everything, I feel like. And I hate to be this way, but I've had confidence this year. And yeah, sometimes we play okay. The win at Penn State was solid. But this game, I just don't know, man. I got a bad feeling. I got a really bad feeling that Indiana is going to lay down and die in this game. And I hope that's not the case. I want to make this very clear. I want Indiana to win. I want us to be successful. I don't want to go through coaching changes. That's not fun, okay? But who's it going to be? How are you going to get this thing turned around? What is going to work for this Indiana squad? Umar Ballow's got to get his. Mackenzie Mbako has to get back into a rhythm, man. You don't even have to, I'm not saying make all your shots, but man, make more than two. Go better than 2 for 11 from the floor. How about that? Make a 3 or 2 if you'd like. Luke Goody, same thing. We need him to get back to knocking down big time shots. Miles Rice has to play well. Don't turn it over. You need some support from your counterpart, Cannon Carlisle. Man, we brought you guys in from the Pac-12. One of you's producing, and the other one's struggling really, really bad. And all jokes aside, this Indiana team right now, we have to rally together, have to find a way to play with effort and energy and not in fights and scrums, but come out in the first 20 minutes and really try to punch Ohio State in the mouth because they're good enough to go on runs. And I don't know what their crowd's going to be like on a Friday night for a team that's 2-4 in Big Ten play. I don't know. I guess we'll find out and see tonight. But you have a chance to get right. You have a chance to get back on track because Ohio State's not this just unbeatable team. They're not, okay? They're good, and I think they can get up and get people at times, but they're not as unbeatable giant that Indiana has to like fear and walk up against, right? You have at Ohio State, at Northwestern, home for Maryland. This is your moment. This is your time. You have 3 games to fix it. 3 games to fix your identity, figure out who you are, and figure out who your playmakers are. And if you can't figure it out in that 3-game stretch, when you go at 17 Purdue, at 24 Wisconsin, home for 20 Michigan, at number 12 Michigan State, home for UCLA, and home for 17 Purdue. If you can't figure it out in the next 3, you ain't going to figure it out in those games. And at that point, in that stretch somewhere, that would be my guess of where Mike Woodson may see his career come to an end in Bloomington. Hope not. Hope that's not what happens. But that all starts tonight against Ohio State on the road. If you play like you did against Penn State on the road, you'll win. But if you play like the way you did against Iowa on the road, you'll get blasted once again. So we'll see. Indiana, Ohio State play tonight. The late night tip on Fox. Everybody in the country will be watching. Nothing can go wrong, right? Sure. We'll see how Indiana is able to do this. Ohio State currently favored by 7.5. I'll let you judge that. You can hop on FanDuel and jump on that line if you'd like to. I'm not going to tell you which way to go or which way that I would go. So, no, we'll have we'll talk about it. We'll have a little watch party and get that together. So excited to just see. I mean, hopefully we perform well. That's pretty much all I have as we are wrapping up here. Show signs of life if you're Indiana. Show signs of life. Hopefully you change something. Hopefully you fix something, and you can keep this season going with a couple of winnable games before you hit Murder's Row. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here. Really, really do appreciate it. If you're listening on audio, like I said, follow. Be sure you are keeping up with your notifications. Have those turned on your platform so you don't miss new episodes, right? So make sure you are able to keep track of all of that. And then on YouTube, like this video, drop your thoughts down below. What name should Indiana go after if they get rid of Mike Woodson? If I didn't name him, drop them in the YouTube comments and subscribe to the channel there as well. All right, Hoosier fans, enjoy the game tonight. More coming up later right here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast on audio and video. Until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.